Hello, it's Paul Bergin here from the Mars Hill blog. You can find me at www.paulbergin.blogspot.co.uk, and I'm doing a series of vlogs, political heroes of mine who I think helped change society for the better. Reaching the end of those series of vlogs now, or almost the end. And this is the first one done of someone who's still very much alive, and that's the former Prime Minister Gordon Brown. And Gordon Brown's a bit of a Marmite Prime Minister. I think Tony Blair certainly was, in that he is either liked or loathed. He could be difficult or terse, perhaps, Gordon Brown, but I think he was someone who is perceived to have wrecked the economy, but I think in some ways he protected the British economy for a very long while, and for that he should be thanked. He was born in Scotland in 1951. His father was a church minister. He was very much a son of the manse. His politics was in his blood. He was allowed to stay up some night at the age of 8 when the October 59 election happened, so he could see some of the results. And he went after university. He's one of the few who never went to Oxford, but I believe it was Edinburgh he went to, and he stood for Parliament in 79, failed to get in. That's common amongst a lot of successful politicians. Their first attempt in getting into Parliament usually fails. But he got elected for the first time in 83. He got to share an office with another newly elected MP, Tony Blair, the Labour MP for Sedgefield, and they both went up through the ranks together as leading figures on the moderate wing, the right of the Labour Party. And he got to the shadow cabinet within 4 years, slightly ahead of Blair initially, but by 1992, when John Smith became leader, Gordon Brown got to be Shadow Chancellor, Tony Blair was Shadow Home Secretary, and both were on the NEC. And when John Smith died, Gordon Brown was expected by many, not least Gordon Brown, to succeed him. But a lot in the media and a lot of people in the Labour Party wanted it to be Tony Blair. Tony Blair, in this now famous occasion, took Gordon Brown to a restaurant, Granita, and asked for him not to pursue leadership, that they needed to work together, and that should he become Prime Minister in the next general election, he would retire about 2 years after the election following that, so he'd be Prime Minister for about 6 years, and then Gordon would take over. That's allegedly the story. There'll be some conflict, I imagine, as to what was actually said, but that is one of the most spoken about accounts. Gordon Brown obviously had much to do with Labour's major victories in 1997-2001. He was pretty much a strong Chancellor of the Exchequer. Blair, unusually for Prime Minister, left him pretty much to his devices. And what was successful about Brown was he kept the economy in a stable state. Where he did go is he spent where he shouldn't have spent. He should have saved more, which he didn't do. But he put forward 5 economic tests to avoid us joining the euro, which, given some of the upsets we had later, probably saved us a lot of mess, although we've still got a heck of a lot of mess in dealing with the fallout over Brexit. He had a lot of money spent in international development. He showed a strong ethical side to his premiership, to his as Chancellor of the Exchequer and then as Prime Minister, but with a strong economic bond. But as Prime Minister, in an uncontested election in 2007, when Blair finally resigned after 10 years, Brown was perhaps, was less of a good Prime Minister than he was Chancellor. He floundered at the dispatch box at PMQs. He didn't quite have the charisma Blair did. But he did have the puritanical streak and a certain degree of moral integrity. But then we had the financial crash, and governments never do well after an economic fallout. And time and again, Cameron, who knew how to play the media and was ruthless to the point of being downright unkind towards Brown, managed to score points again and again. And come 2010, anyone who saw the news at about 7 a.m. at breakfast could see that even in dealing with the hung parliament in front of us, the Tories had 307, Labour 255. Even getting into a deal with the Lib Dems, who had 57 seats in the end, and having to deal with the nationalist parties, you would still have a coalition that barely touched a majority. It was clear to some of us on the outside that it was game over at that point. But Brown bravely tried to help keep Labour in office. He realised he was part of the problem and offered to resign immediately on the formation of a coalition. He resigned immediately as leader when he left Downing Street. He remains an MP for another 5 years, and has given a lot of his work towards third world issues. He's shown a lot of strength and a lot of dignity and a lot of integrity since leaving office. And many will fault him for a number of things, but his puritanical streak, the way he kept the economy safe for so long, considering the way he showed an ethical streak in his politics, especially with third world issues, means that I think in the long run history will be kind to him, certainly more than David Cameron. And he did help change society for the better in some ways, but some found him too off-putting to the point where they are too readily dismissive, and I think that's a tragedy.